right.
Welcome to our newest exhibition in the Project Space Gallery here at the Peoria Art Guild. We have Whitney Johnson Lessard, and it's Held Within the Rocks and Dust, which is a very engaging title. And first, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Whitney?
Yeah, sure. I'm an artist. I also teach. So right now I'm teaching at Bradley and ICC. I teach drawing, which is great. So fun. I live in Peoria. Got 3 cats and love cats, love animals.
Does their fur end up in your pieces every once in a while?
I think it probably does.
This exhibition is actually strictly about your paper making and using pulp to create a base and then adding different materials and things like that. So let's talk a little bit about your process, and let's just start with these 3, which also everyone is so engaged with these because you have these reclaimed wood frames that just make you smile. I'm sorry, I think they're just a little extra oomph to your matrix, you know?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's great. They're arranged so nicely too. Yeah, so I make paper. The paper's all made from fabric. The fabric I've just had collected for a while. I don't know, I thought I would use it for crafts or something, but a lot of it's come from thrift stores and just extra stuff. So I like to go to there's a thrift shop that has a lot of craft supplies in Eureka that I frequent. But yeah, I had all this fabric. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. Eventually I started making paper with it, which is not too hard to do. You just have to cut it into really small pieces before you put it in the blender, like 1 inch by 1 inch or so. That's what I start with as my base for these.
So you're making pulp from any kind of fibrous material that creates, and it's wonderful and it's so simple, but it binds the fibers together. And when you pull, if people don't know, it's in a slurry, and when you pull it up, it's just simple gravity that interlocks those, and then when we couche it or go to dry it, it dries together so well. One of the things I love the fact that this entire show is basically a square format. There's a few that are rectangular, but they're very obvious shapes. And then you've gone into them and you put some very geometric shapes, like these are all seem to be cut pieces of material, but then we have these organic shapes too. Do you do any sketching, or does the piece just kind of evolve as it speaks to you?
Definitely both. I do some sketching. I kind of know what I want to start with usually. So I have a sketchbook that's just full of quick sketches, of impressions of something that I've seen, like if it's a plant or a space or just something that inspired me in some way.
Well, I think some of the titles inspired you too, because this one is Sticks on the Ground, and they obviously look like sticks that could be on the ground. But then we have some, and these 3 seem to really work together well. They talk to each other, especially Chondrules 1 and 2. And what was the idea with getting these very tightly knitted rectangles with pieces that are somewhat in a pattern, but they're not? That one is obviously the most random of all, but
yeah, definitely. This kind of relates to the title of the show too, these 2 pieces. The phrase "held within the rocks and dust" comes from an article I was reading about a meteor that and it was written by NASA, and they were talking about what the meteor's made of. And they were talking about the secrets held within the rocks and dust of our world.
Yes.
And the universe. So anyway, I started looking into what they might be made of. There was a comet or it was an asteroid that we sent a probe to last year, and it brought back some material for the first time ever to Earth. I think it was out for about 5 years on its trip to bring it back. But anyway, it's called Bennu, and scientists are just looking at the material on its own, untouched by Earth. And so I was just looking into what might be in them, and I just came across images of something called a chondrule, and it's a little bit of material that they tend to form in these conglomerates inside of an asteroid or a meteor, and so when you cut it, you'll see these
sort of like
circles.
a geode. It's got all these different things. I mean, a geode, they're all the same stone actually, but this is more various, shall we say, materials and everything.
So it's just such a fantastic like image that it inspired me to work with the scraps that I had in my studio.
This piece in particular is one of Jeff's and my favorite pieces, and we explained a little bit to you that back in the 70s, Louise Nevelson and David Hockney were just discovering paper as a medium. And she did a lot of cast paper, and most of her cast paper is either black or it's white. She doesn't vary. And this one is just so strong because we love these little compartments that you put on, and then you fill them with just tiniest little other objects or gestures or whatever. How did you, and are you doing a series of these, or is this just a one and done, or?
So far this is just a one and done piece. I have all of these little scraps that I had made for other paintings that just didn't work out for some reason, and sometimes I'll just arrange them and see what they look like. So this just comes from arranging them, and then I did, seeing the forms by themselves without color is really nice because you can see all the shadows and that from the paper itself.
And that's exactly what Louise Nevelson really liked. I mean, she has her box structures, but in the case with the paper, she cast them, and they cast these and just illuminate these little nuances and stuff. And here we have a couple of other darker ones that sometimes you call. When do you arrive at what palette choice you're going to use as far as coloring it goes?
One of the really, I think, exciting parts of making paper is sometimes there's a surprise. You don't know if you're mixing stuff together what it's going to look like. So having that kind of ground as a base to work with, like here with this little green specks that wouldn't break down very well. I think there's probably some kind of polyester in them too.
Probably, yeah.
But it's a nice base to have the paper itself, and then I just have a bunch of papers now that maybe I'll go back into and look at and wonder if it matches some idea that was kind of forming. Yeah.
And how do you determine whether you're going to build a surface or whether it's going to be just basically the pulp, the paper pulp that you've arranged and colored, so that this one again is Crescent Sun. Crescent Sun and Comet, I think, are the two thematic ones that are very obvious and evident that it's just about the paper and the color, not about building up the surface at all.
Yeah, the Crescent Sun comes from, we had that solar eclipse last year too. It was really
was been incredible.
Year. And so let's see. I really liked this paper. But it was so strong, like with all the colors happening in here, that really I couldn't do a lot to it because I wanted it to.
Yeah, you want to capture that and keep it. I know that feeling, and that's the same. I think with these, this series. The way Jeff and I installed it, at least. We just loved how the overall surface was rather tonal, and then all of a sudden you give these pops of color. And this one in particular, Mushrooms After the Rain, was an example that you had submitted to the Rennick show. And tell us a little bit about also how you did your pigmentation in this one in particular.
Sure, yeah. That's a great way to display them too, because they do have a primary pigment that affects the color overall. So the primary pigment here, then they're both mixed with white paint, but here is ashes. That's just from bonfires and just
not crematoriums, right?
Yeah, it's wood ashes. But who knows what could have been in the past. And so in this one, so it has that gray color, and this one is made from the base of iron oxide, which is just in this case is rusted metal from the railroad track that goes right by the Bioversia plant.
Yeah, which is the old ADM plant.
Yeah.
And I think, especially for the Rennick show, it was so wonderful because the Rennick is from sponsored by the Historical Society, and it's supposed to reflect the history of Peoria. And what a better way of creating an abstract work by taking elements from a building that's been around with Archer Daniels and for Hiram Walker and all that, and to take the rust and to grind it and use it as part of the pigment. I just think it was just brilliant, just brilliant. This is one of your most multicolor pieces, and it's cicadas keeping time. And again, I think it's pretty obvious that natural events influence your work.
Here you can see mainly more so the iron oxide without any white in it, and here it has a little bit of white. But yeah, definitely a lot of color happening here. A great year for the cicadas emerging too, which is so cool because we would go on walks in the woods and see these little holes in the ground, and they're kind of just surrounding the base of a tree, and that's where they're emerging.
And 17 years in the making for them to emerge out of that, for sure. These three, we really thought, the brilliance of the colors of all three of these is really remarkable, and it just kind of lends them to be displayed this way. Again, this one has some very large shapes that you just adhere to the surface. I think this one is it's kind of an outlier, because it's got everything the others have, but then you unified it by doing the spiral painting around it, and it just really there's a lot of charm. And this is rocks under the water, so does dropping a rock in the water give you the idea of making these concentric circles?
There's a few creeks that are really a lot of good hiking in Peoria, but the Spring Creek is a place that we go a lot. It's in East Peoria. It's kind of a newer place that people can go, like publicly, and these all kind of relate because they do have reflections of some kind.
Is that the idea?
Yeah, well, they're displayed really nicely.
Well, and this one literally is broken glass on the ground reflecting a branch. And I think the branch is kind of repeated, very, very, and almost identical each time that you represented it. Let's talk a little bit though about framing, particularly these pieces here. There's the natural wood for the most part, but I love in this one, you actually have 3 different panels you put together. And I think that adds to the depth and also just to the curiosity in how you build a picture plane and then frame it.
The color comes from sometimes paint with the ones that have the colored frame. It's like a stain, just watered down acrylic. But the brown color in every case is from black walnuts. It's a very easy to make stain, a water-based stain, and the wood absorbs it really nicely. And so I like to work with either the natural wood if I have like a lighter.
And these aren't all the same pieces of wood, are they? You take multiple pieces and place them together, and I think that gives them, each one is such a unique frame, and it gives it a different identity, and how it changes also how you look at the dark ones compared to the light colored ones. They pop in different ways, and I think that also is something that I hope you maintain. I hope you have a dedication to framing them yourself and to making them curious like that.
That's great. I have a new series that I don't know. It'll be a different framing than this, but I'm excited to keep exploring it.
Do you like working small like this? Do you intend to work larger, or do you just like to make these, basically 12 by 12
I do
pieces?
like the size. I feel like it's accessible.
I love it too. I love, and it's accessible and it's not intimidating, and people can, I think, build a better relationship when there's small details that you really kind of tend towards, as opposed to a large thing which scale tends to dominate what you think of the piece in particular.
That's a good point, definitely.
So, and we have one last one here, which is, like I said, the very obvious title, Comet. And we have this wonderful comet that's falling to Earth, and Jeff and I quote, "This is the most gorgeous little line right here where you just join those two, and it's just so perfect. It really is. It creates a little bit of tension, but at the same time you feel that, like the sky, the huge sky to the earth, and you feel that little bit of tension that comes with the meeting on the horizon line.
That was an accident, really, which is nice because you never know what will happen when you make a mistake. So I had cut this originally, and it wasn't going to be used for this painting, the paper at least, and then I didn't have any larger paper, so I had to use pieces that I had cut, and so I brought these two back together again, and it worked really nicely for this.
And don't you get really excited? I know I did when I was doing paper making and teaching it. Do you get these little just insets or just little bumps in it that create the edge that is a decal edge, but there's a little bit more structure to it. It's not like when you pull the paper and you just get the natural decal, but it's just the water rushing off and breaking it down that way, where you get these wonderful little edges that I think are just remarkable. We had a wonderful, wonderful paper making workshop where we had over almost 60 people come and attend. This is going to be your primary medium for quite a while, isn't it?
I think so.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
I'm working on something right now which I'm excited about with the Peoria Park District. That's more, it's like a participatory kind of exploration on the vision of animals. So it'll involve some kind of body modification, which I'm very excited about, and hopefully we'll get there soon. But I also have another side of my practice that explores other things too.
But you are driven by nature and the events of nature, I think, and it's just wonderful. Well, thank you so very, very much. We love Held Within the Rocks and Dust so much, and it's one of those, we just have a few more days, and I hope people will really come and enjoy it.
Thank you.
Thanks,
so much.
Whitney. We love you.